start?
Well, this week, or the week that we are filming this, school districts had to send in like their opening plans and whatever to the state of Michigan,
Right.
which is where we're at. And our district, who is in Southeast Michigan, Metro Detroit area, opted to start online or virtually, however you want to say it, which is a plan of a lot of schools in the area.
5 weeks, reevaluate.
Yep, 5 weeks. Yeah, basically they put a timetable on it. Like, we're going to start this way, give it 5 weeks, so where we're at.
Yeah.
What they did, interestingly enough, is they didn't come up with these like siloed plans of this is what virtual is, this is what in-seat is, this is what hybrid is, and transition between those. They came up with a standalone schedule for the year that is adaptable to, I guess, all ideas of what we could face, whether it's online, in-seats, or a hybrid
Making
idea.
it flexible.
Making it flexible. So the question becomes is like, where do you start? I think a lot of teachers and parents are like had a buildup of anxiety of what's going to happen, how can I plan for this, what am I supposed to do, without knowing where we're landing.
Yeah.
And so now that we have the answer, we know where we're starting, what to do? What do we do?
So I think one of the first things I tend to always do when it's a situation like this where I'm coming at something that's new and potentially has some great successes but also some pitfalls is I dig in and do research, right? Like, I don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. I don't necessarily have to be an expert in every single component of virtual learning, but I do know there are people out there. So I've been digging in to quite a few things in a couple of different ways. Like, one of the things is I read Cornelius Miner's book, We Got This, which was much more like a inspirational like mindset, like really helping me validate that I can be kind of disruptive to the system and like try some different things. I know we both talked about looking at George Couros, some of the ideas he had for like building relationships and like starting in this way. We've both been doing a lot of webinars from educators, anti-racism, really good panelists, tons of professors and authors and really good people through that.
For sure.
Digging into kind of like some options of technology from Melanie Kitchen, who lives in this world of, ed tech and helping support some of this. So I need to see what other people are thinking to figure out like what's the pattern, what's the common thread, like what can I take from this? What kind of research have you?
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those things I think people forget real quick. We're inundated with media and news coverage that somehow always throws the sentence of these unprecedented times, right? To kind of build like we don't know where we're going or what we're doing. Virtual learning is not new idea.
Yeah, it's not unprecedented.
Like the state of Michigan has a virtual academy. Many school districts have like a virtual learning arm of their district.
Some hybrid
stuff.
In close districts to us too.
Yeah, close districts.
For a while.
Yep. And at this point, I mean, if you're our age or roughly our age and went to college, you probably had some online courses in college. Not to say any of those experiences or all those experiences are good or bad. Just like anything, there's bad versions, good versions, and stuff like that. But that's kind of where my mindset's been. Like, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. Like, I'm not going to go out and plant my flag. Like, I'm going to do online learning better than it's ever been done before.
Sure.
It's my job to go and learn about it.
Yeah.
And research some of those avenues of places that's existed before.
Yeah.
And realistically, I think the other thing, my other element while researching is understanding what I do and have been doing in my classroom for however many years might not work.
So taking the stuff away that's going to be maybe detrimental
Well, and
to the kids,
that's one
shifting it.
That's one element. I'm looking at it as what I did with kids in front of me
Yeah.
might not be the solution. And I'm looking at it more like being okay with that.
Gotcha.
Like looking at like, I've been doing this, and this. Okay, this might not work, and I got to be cool with that. It doesn't mean what I did was bad or not great or something I can't come back to.
Yeah.
It's just where we're at now, online learning.
Yeah.
I got to think in a different space. I got to
Sure.
think of it. And I guess those kind of, for me, go together. I know I have to think in a different space, but I'm not alone in that space.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not by myself, like, whatever we'll do. We've never done this before, right? I know what worked in my classroom won't necessarily work online, but the online environment already exists.
Yeah.
I'm joining it
Yeah.
more than
Trying to create it.
like blazing a new trail, which
Yeah.
I feel like that's what virtual learning has been sold as. Like, it's going to be this blaze of a new trail, and it's going to be so bad, and we're going to fall on our faces because first time out's never good. And like,
Yeah.
when we're just joining a world that's already existed.
Yeah, people have been trying to perfect this for a little bit, and I think
100%.
looking to those people, right, whether it be books, blogs, Twitter, whatever, like seeking out that information, I do think is kind of like step one of how, like you said, how do we start? How do we approach this?
Yep, and I think it's it leaves me with almost a cautionary idea. Like, I'm stepping into the new world. I need to learn.
Yeah.
Instead of like, I already am an experienced teacher, I'm going to shoehorn everything I do into this virtual environment,
Right.
which I think that my personal opinion is a setup for failure.
And I think hearing you say, I'm stepping into this new world, I need to learn and adapt, I would hope would be what a teacher would say every year, because your kids are different every year and they should be kind of shaping and guiding.
Well, what was that
What the
thing
year looks
you
like.
were talking about before, like the other day, about it's not about, oh, I'm going to mangle it. It's not about teaching curriculum.
Yeah, the Cornelius
Yeah.
Minor quote.
Yeah.
So good. So like I said, that book, we got this very like inspirational and like whatever.
And every time you say Cornelius Minor, it always makes me think of the Idris Elba's character in The Office, Charles Minor.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
sure.
know why, but it makes me.
I don't even know if the spelling's the same.
I picture
That's
him
who
for
you
some
picture?
reason. Yeah.
Well, I can show you a picture of Cornelius and you can like shake that. But he has a lot of pages where it's just like big quotes where you can just be like, yes.
Oh, okay.
And one of them was, I do not teach curriculum. I don't even teach students, but my job as a teacher is to learn as much as I can about my students and mold the instruction to meet their needs. And I was like, ugh.
Yeah. When you were telling me that before, that made me like almost excited
Yeah.
for what the changes of this year is going to bring, because it's gonna force a lot of teachers who have decided, like, I figured out how to teach my classes,
Yeah.
and it's like rinse and repeat every year,
For sure.
right? And
happens.
they make relationships with their kids, but that's separate and inconsequential
To the curriculum.
to the
instruction.
curriculum. So like, they can come in, hey, how's it going? How was that game yesterday? What have you been up to? Oh, that's awesome. I was doing this and yada, yada, yada. All right, Belle, class has started.
Lesson 5.
Here's the lesson.
Yeah.
And like, there isn't that actual,
Where it's adaptive and like,
I
purposeful.
think some of the best teachers that create awesome relationships with kids still create their lessons in a vacuum. So then they are rinsed and repeated every year.
Yeah.
Right.
Trying to bridge the two.
Or like, trying to, like they consider that mastering their craft, and
Sure.
they like, I got this, I got it down, I can
Yeah.
teach this to anybody, like, instead of that mentality, which I think is awesome.
For sure. So then post research, right? Like I said, looking at experts to try and see patterns and like common threads, things that I want to take away. I started to think like, what in this virtual world, what are my priorities?
Right.
What are the things that I'm going to want for every day, want for every week, and really try to like hone in. So I'm curious, what are your
Well,
priorities?
the priority idea I think is awesome, and I wish it was something that was like taught to me when I was, in college and student teaching.
Yeah.
Like approach lessons in your classroom with priorities, like the priorities for your kids, the priorities for your daily, for your weekly, like build it that way instead of just going, I'm going to have this bulletin board. I'm going to have my classroom set up this way. And I'm like, where I feel like you're just doing stuff.
A little haphazard.
Or you're like piecewising things I've seen. I've learned about this. I want to do this. I've learned about that. I want to do that. And you don't have a core or an identity of who you are.
A value that like strings through.
Right. And I learned, honestly, like I thought about this priority thing. You had started kind of spitballing some ideas about what your class is going to and how it would run and stuff like that.
But I know you thought about it daily and weekly, which I like that mindset.
And I guess I get a lot of that from some of the coaching PD I've got, where it's like they talk about in like, especially in football, like creating the identity of your team. What are you going to hang your hat on? Who are you as a team? And that's where you can build some of that community type ideas and build an offense and a defense from that identity that you are.
For sure.
Right? So small things might change, but I'm always this.
Yeah.
Right? So to me, that's where that priorities came from. Like, what do I want to do on a daily basis?
Yeah.
What do I want to achieve on a weekly basis?
Yeah.
So then small things will change, hiccups will exist. I might phase out one thing and bring another thing in, but I still have this identity.
You have a
foundation of what I want to do.
Yeah.
So, okay, for me, we got to list them out here daily. On a daily idea, now we're going to our new built schedule. They call a 3x3. I don't know if I've ever heard it referred to that way before this, but basically A and B days, 90-minute blocks, right? So for me, super important, I have to talk to each one of my kids every day.
Okay.
So each hour, got to talk to each kid one way or another.
Yeah.
Right? I need to have student collaboration. So breakout rooms or whatever, like they have to work together in the hour.
Okay.
From that, like their voices have to kind of drive the instruction.
Like what we were just talking about.
Yeah, like for me, math teacher, it's so easy, and I think a lot of teachers are going to get math teachers specifically are going to get caught up into this, especially with this online environment. It's a new idea to them, so they're going to rest into what they're most comfortable with, which will just be delivering instruction, whether it's through a video, right, through them, whatever. So I want the kids' voices to drive that instruction. And then lastly, for the daily student check-ins, I forget who that was from. That was from one of our webinar type things.
Yeah. Talking
about giving students an opportunity each day to kind of just what's happening in their world, what's going on.
How
you feeling? And roll. Because what we're getting rid of in the virtual environment is that safety net of school.
Yeah.
So being able to come in and say, like, my parents have been working a lot. It's been tough. I'm watching my little brother or whatever. Or, like, things have been great. Like, I've been really liking how my classes have been turning out virtually. Like, this is really cool for me. Like, just an idea for them to kind of echo what's going in their world, who they are. Like, an opportunity just to, like, say this is what's this.
For sure.
So that's daily. Want to do that daily. And then for us, daily is every other day.
Right.
So it's important to do all those things because, there isn't really a tomorrow.
Yeah.
For a lot of those kids, it's the day after. And then weekly, biggest thing, got to find some area for fun. I feel like in the spring when we did some of the virtual emergency stuff, it was like a lot of people went like down to business. Like nuts and bolts of stuff.
Yeah.
It was all business. I opted to spend a lot of time when I was connecting with kids live to be a fun setup. it was a very uncertain time. Like we had few
early on,
answers. No one was working. Like it was a kind of a slight disaster. So I wanted to edge some of that fun stuff kind of going, because for a lot of kids, being able to hang out with friends and that's what happens at school.
For sure, that's where they get their fun.
Yep. So fun's big priority weekly. Formative assessment. Assessments are going to be. I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet.
Yeah.
But to be able to gauge where the kids are going to be formatively on a weekly basis, I think it would be super helpful. So that's more of just, a pedagogy type thing getting rolled in there. Something you brought up that I really liked was being multimodal every week, which was something like, being able to utilize some videos on some day or reading in some day or, just different avenues of delivering instruction, having the kids work.
Yeah.
Trying to get away from a cookie cutter, every day looks like this.
Sure. Having some routine, but being able to interchange, like you said, the mode.
Yep, and I think that's going to be huge.
The method, yeah.
And then more or less just for the math element of it, making sure that I'm utilizing some multi-step, some more dig-in type problems. Again, depending on, what math, people you prescribe to, whether it's some Dan Meyer stuff or Robert Kaplinski or, whatever. There's some great stuff out there. But make sure to push that in there and remind myself to do that, because I more or less to think it at a bigger scale, non-math wise, I think there's going to be an element of people oversimplifying things.
Sure.
Like, the kids won't be able to do this much rigor because we're online, because we're doing this. But I really want to push myself and force myself, you have to keep this going. You got to keep it
that
rolling.
higher level thinking. And
Yep.
especially, I think, with 90 minutes, it might be a little easier to jump into that.
Yep, and I also think why I put that in the weekly versus the daily, I think when you try to do that daily, you don't give the kids enough room to breathe and learn something new. Mm-hmm. If you're always hitting them with something hard, you got to give them days to digest new concepts and work with them at a lower level before you dig deep into them.
Yeah.
So your priorities.
So pretty similar. Some of them I just may be wording them a little bit different. So day to day, I really want to have this foundation of three big things. I want student contribution. You called it student voice to guide instruction. I just want their voice to be heard. I want it to be applicable. I want it to be something that's not just lip service, and I'm really embedding and listening, to what they have to say. Another thing daily, I think you said, talk to every kid. I'm thinking some sort of emotional connection. That social emotional learning, I think, is going to be huge in this type of setup. I want to make that a priority in my teaching and in my personal life going onward, just really trying to have that emotional literacy. Mm-hmm. So I want to try and connect, whether that's through a Microsoft form or the chat box or the Q&A or one-on-one conversation or a whole group conversation or whatever the case, but honoring the fact that they have feelings and emotions and thoughts.
And I mean, that's my exact goal with check-ins.
For sure, this value, exactly. Yep. And then my last one, I want to make sure I'm conferring, and whether that's individual conferring on academic stuff or emotional stuff, or that small group and doing some strategic things, but again, utilizing those breakout rooms and really pushing to do some of that higher stuff and pushing them in their notebooks and their reading and their writing. And then weekly, again, that multimodal piece of, there's so much out there, and we in our personal lives use multimodal all the time.
Yeah.
We learn things from YouTube. We watch documentaries. We watch fictional things. We read books. We go on Twitter. We look at blogs and vlogs and whatever. So it's just giving them opportunity to learn things in a variety of ways. And again, weekly, so that I can mix it up and keep it interesting.
Yeah.
Another weekly foundation. So this is something that I've always done the past few years, but just trying to find a way to make it work within this remote setting. Rather than homework, I always talk to my kids about using their brain on what they love. So when you walk away from these 90 minutes with me, go off and do something that you love, but keep that creativity, keep the left and right mind kind of working in whatever way makes you happy. But I just want to take the time weekly to share about that. Did you bake something? Did you go play outside?
Right.
Are you in some sort of sport?
I love that. Not to like tangent shoot off here, but so often I get people, parents or whatever, oh yeah, we've been, you run them during the summer. Oh yeah, we've been working on math problems during the summer. And I'm like,
like, that sounds horrible.
Like, why do you have to punish your kids like that? Like, I like that, using your brain like that for fun, understanding that what we're teaching them, literacy, reading comprehension, stuff like that, problem solving, math, it works.
Go into the real world.
So like, instead of doing math problems, go like do a puzzle.
Yeah.
Rubik's Cube.
For sure.
Play a strategy game. Like, you're still using your problem-solving mentality and growing those connections.
Yeah.
But problems on a page, rough.
Unless they love it.
If they love it. But even then, if you love mathematics, you're digging into something way different than problems on a page.
For sure. Video games, YouTube, the list goes on and on, but just kind of like putting in time weekly to talk about the stuff that we love and how we're spending our time, and because that would be conversations I'd have in the classroom. I think it's pretty doable to use some of my 90 minutes, to talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
And then you called it formative assessment. I'm calling it show me what you know. Show me what you've learned. Show me what you've tried. It's going to be pictures of notebooks. It's going to be discussion posts. It's going to be conversation. It's going to be whatever. Just show me what have you taken away, at some point during this week that you think's making you a better reader or writer.
Which I like that wording, just on how it's looked at. Because you've probably crossed this bridge too, where you've been in some meeting or whatever, and someone has like, oh, I got this formative assessment I want to do.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you're like, that's a test.
Yeah.
Like, you saying formative means nothing.
Yeah.
Like, you're handing them a test.
Yeah.
Let's call it what it is.
And I'm just trying to think about like equity and how, how do we balance like showing the kids that the way they already do something or feel comfortable doing something is okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Show me in different ways. So, those are kind of my...
It's good. And like I said, I wish that was something I learned early on how to plan a classroom and how to plan a year. And
this summer
priorities.
Of like trying to dive in and be better and be, everything that my kids need me to be. I'm literally thinking or saying that out loud so many times. Why had I not thought about this sooner? But I think we gotta give ourselves, some freedom to be lifelong learners and adjust.
And honestly, like, it's probably I'm less anxious to start this year than other years.
I kind of am too,
which is crazy. It's the most uncertain year. Like,
maybe there's some freedom to that. Maybe there's this idea of like everyone is like green at this, or you know what I mean? Like, this idea of like, I don't know what it is, but I agree with you. I kind of feel...
Well, giving myself, like, I know this is what I'm going to be. The lessons and the content is inconsequential. Like, I'm this.
Like, think about our priorities.
Yeah, I'm this, so I can make this work. Let's go.
Other than kids showing us what they know, which is a very, like, instructional, formative assessment, nothing we said has anything to do with our content area, has nothing to do with... reading a certain book or doing, understanding a certain skill or whatever. So I think if these are our foundations, like you said, it's instruction second, or the content or whatever.
And I know a couple of mine got kind of academic-y, but realistically I can reword, multi-tier problem practice and all that, and just like rigor. Keeping the rigor up and having them excel, like they're
scaffolding.
It's scaffolding. It's I wrote it with a pencil super quick on a piece of paper to get the idea out, and it is what it is. But yeah, you're right. I think it's mostly non-academic.
So speaking of non-academic, we talked about diving into research.
Yep.
We talked about how are we prioritizing to then go off and plan and really start to think about what these 90 minutes look like. So I think the third thing to consider when we're starting how are we building these connections with kids? Day one, week
Yeah.
one. So what are you thinking about for that?
Well, it's always been something I try to excel at, right? I've always been one, like, I can't do my job well without having this connection with kids, right? I can't do it. Like, it's just impossible. And I've always stressed building that relationship from, like, the academic relationship. Like, the only reason I'm meeting these kids is because they have been chosen to be my students and me their teacher.
For sure.
So anything I have to build off that idea.
Yeah.
Because from there, I feel like if that relationship always has a cornerstone from that academic relationship, I can, like, stuff like homework getting in is not a problem, or working in class is not a problem, or collaborating with, unfamiliar group members is not a problem, because, like, there's this trust built into this academics. Like, I'm not going to let you down in this group I'm putting you in, and you're not going to let me down working, because we have this relationship, right?
Yeah.
I have expectations for you, you have expectations for me.
I think that reciprocal trust, that's come up a lot in things that I've been reading.
100%. And, going from the academic side is because otherwise it's like how we became friends, or how I'm friends with, like, my age appropriate friends. Like, then it's what common interests. Being 34 on the way to 35, my common interest with 11-year-olds is starting to waver. Yeah, I know. I got a couple
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
But they don't even get that. They don't even get those references anymore. But then it is up to interests and things you like, or sports, or whatever, right? And then you only get so many relationships. You get the kids that are like you,
that are into that stuff,
into the stuff like you. So then if you have a narrow field of interest, you're gonna have a narrow group of relationships with your kids,
right?
We all have the common idea. I am all of yours teacher.
Right.
You are all my students.
And
if I start there, like, hey, we're going to have a relationship just because of that.
Yeah.
And build it from there. And then I can use sports with kids that like sports, or I can use different things. Yeah. But it has to come back with, like, there's this relationship built because I'm your teacher.
Yeah.
You're my student, like,
for sure.
And go from there. So figuring out that connection and building those connections out of the gate, I think it's got to be step one.
One of the things that I really want to try, and I'm pretty excited about, that lives in this world, because we talked about, like, valuing their voice, right? We both said that was a priority, and I think from the get-go, working through identity work, I think, is going to be so helpful in creating that trust and creating comfort and norms of, like, a community. There's a woman who is so out there on Twitter. She's been so helpful. Resource room teacher in Baltimore. Her name's Amber Cook. And we've gone back and forth a couple of times.
That the woman is, like, originally from Michigan?
No, but that's they're, like, connected. So they've been doing book clubs and stuff together. Gotcha. So I had gone through her. That she reached out to me, but so awesome. And she, a couple of weeks ago, shared this document, and I literally said to her, like, this is the thing I've been looking for, and I didn't know I was looking for it.
Wow,
right?
Nice.
This website that we can put a link to, I think it's called, like, Facing Histories or something like that, but it has this kind of framework or template of how to do these, like, identity maps.
Nice.
And start to think about, like, what makes us who we are, and what are the types of things that we need to recognize. And I think a lot of times we've shied away from things that deem themselves controversial for whatever reason, like race or religion or culture or whatever. But it's like, that's what makes us who we are. And that's what's going to have our differences, that, like you said, you can talk about football with this kid and you can talk about music with this kid, or you can learn something completely new from this other kid. Because you don't have common interests yet, but, like, listening to something they have to share, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's really interesting. But just having, like, this honest interest, I guess, in, like, what these kids have to offer.
Well, it goes back to, I think, some of the learning we did in our like, equity stuff we were doing. Like, it gives kids a voice of identity, where the kids have, I talk about, like, students and my students, and I'm your teacher, like, so, but like these individuals that we have, how often, you know, I remember feeling it as a student. I'm just another one of these kids. You don't know who I am
Yeah.
or why I am the way I am or what I like and don't like. Like, I'm just one of the group in front of you, of one of the hours you have. So to give kids opportunities to have their identity voiced and like be able to build plans and ideas around their identity.
Absolutely, being
is huge.
responsive
Yeah.
to culture.
That's what
who they are.
real differentiated instruction is, isn't it? Like building things, morphing it, taking our knowledge of teaching and our content area knowledge and being able to push it and pull it and twist it
For sure.
to fit the kids that are in front of us.
Absolutely.
Instead of seeing all these kids and go like, you have to form yourself to fit this. This is how I do it.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Crazy. Well, that's a good start.
I think so too. I think next time maybe we'll come back to this idea of like maybe a little bit more beginning of the year.
Like we start getting like content, like more when academics start hitting.
Absolutely.
Or,
Like we could do 90-minute stuff.
yep, 90
How do
minutes stuff.
you break down these 90-minute blocks?
I would even like, what's it look like? Your priorities, building connections. What does that look like
Yeah.
in the classroom? Like these are great ideas, but like what? Put the rubber to the road. What does that look like? 90-minute ideas are good. Even some assessment type
For sure.
tools, I think would be good too.
Yeah, digging into some of those different modes of,
Yeah,
showing what they're getting.
yeah.
So we'll have to come back to this.
We'll post all like the different people, like Twitter follows and maybe some articles and stuff
Yeah.
we've been pulling in the description, and we'll go from there.